We're going to go over Chapter 18 from Open Stax, Rise of Industry. Three big things are coming together to create this rise of industry and to change American society. The book calls it Innovation, Immigration, Industrialization. A few of the innovations are electricity and the steam engine. This is going to allow factories to be in more urban areas. Immigration folks are coming in from Eastern and Southern Europe, and large corporations are going to start to dominate the United States. So, just a few of the innovations that are happening during the Gilded Age. One is going to affect, a few are going to affect more of like the middle class managers whose job it is to keep up with this like rapid growth and to make a more efficient workplace. So, this is going to be the typewriter and the adding machine and the cash register in American homes are going to be remade with flush toilets, and food production, such as like the tin cans, frozen food, are going to allow women to have more time. This is going to shaky. Come here. This is going to contribute to like the women's rights movement. We'll see later. Steel is one of the major things we are going to be focused on. The Bessemer process is an innovation that is going to create cheaper and stronger steel. And steel is going to become the backbone of the Gilded Age, building skyscraper, railroads, and ships. There's an increase in steel production in the United States. The United States will become a major producer of steel. In 1860, we make 13,000 tons of steel, and by 1900, we are doing 10 million tons of steel per year. Communications is also important. The telegraph had been connecting east and west when we do the Transcontinental Railroad. Soon we will be having a telephone, which is going to, tie the country into closer connection. There's one in the White House in 1900, and in 1880 there's only 50,000 telephones, and by 1900 there's 1.35 million telephones. This is going to reduce isolation of rural areas and interconnect society. Edison is one of the most famous innovators of the time. He's going to make the light bulb, the phonograph, the mimeograph machine, the motion picture projector, the dictaphone, storage battery. And he's using the factory assembly line process to make rapid production. He is also going to help to electrify the United States, but his system, the DC power system, is going to lose out to AC. The DC power system can only go 2 miles from the power source, and so that is one of the things he was not able to do. But eventually he goes to the AC system. So the United States is becoming electrified. The cities are being lit up by electricity. So as we are going through this like rise of the big business, one of the major debates are these major leaders of industry robber barons, kind of evil people who are taking advantage of workers, or are they captains of industry? Are they the good guys? Do they deserve their wealth because of innovation and better goods and services? And they are taking advantage of these new technologies and opportunity for growth. We'll go through a few of the major, robber barons or captains of industry. One is Vanderbilt from New York Central. So as we talked about before, trains are going to be bringing in materials from industrial factories. They're going to be bringing goods to consumers. And so who controls the railroads is one of the major places that people are going to start to make money. We go from 35,000 miles at the end of the Civil War to over 200,000 miles by the close of 1900. There was also going to be a lot of innovation on trains, such as car couplers, air brakes, and Pullman and passenger cars. And we are, increasing the amount of goods and number of passengers. Vanderbilt is really going to make his money by consolidating. Consolidating just means bringing in multiple companies into one. We talked before about how there was a railroad boom. There wasn't a lot of coordination. And one of the ways it gets organized is just that you get one company that buys out all the smaller companies, and then they, start to kind of organize that way. And Vanderbilt is going to make his money in the East Coast railroads. Steel, Andrew Carnegie is probably one of the major people you need to remember. He really profited from his rags to riches story. He was a bobbin boy. He came from Scotland as an immigrant. He rose from nothing to become one of the richest men ever in history. And he is going to organize Carnegie Steel. His philosophy is called the Gospel of Wealth. He did believe that the rich owed a debt to society, but he also believed in social Darwinism, or, what we say is this like survival of the fittest. He put the two ideas of philanthropy and social Darwinism together and said, charity as the main consideration should be to help those who help themselves. So you shouldn't give someone money, you should give them a way for them to improve themselves. One of the ways he primarily does this is through libraries. If someone is in need, give them a book, and then they can, help themselves. Carnegie's story ties in with this kind of cultural message at the time. Another example is these Horatio Alger stories, or these like rags to riches stories, was a popular idea at the time. You can make it if you try. It was a lot of these stories of like young industrious people, like the messenger boy, or, a shoe shiner who, works his way up from the bottom and becomes wealthy. The Standard Oil and Rockefeller is another one of the major robber barons or captains of industry at the time. He is going to refine kerosene. Before this, people used whale oil to light their homes. Eventually, it's going to be electricity. But he is going to dominate 95% of the oil refining business in the United States. He does this through two different ways. One is horizontal integration. By buying out other businesses, he would crush the competition because he could charge less. So Standard Oil had safer standards, they had lower prices, and other people couldn't compete with them, and then he would buy them out. He also had a lot of ruthless practices. Vertical integration is another way he's going to make money, by controlling every step in the process: transportation, pipelines, barrel making. And so Rockefeller is going to dominate the oil industry. He is also going to innovate ways to organize the corporation. This is going to be called a trust. A trust is another name for monopoly. So he would have a holding company. It would look like as if there was multiple corporations, but in reality, they were all owned by Standard Oil. And he controlled these other corporations through what's called a holding company. In banking, we're going to have J.P. Morgan. He is going to buy and sell stock. People called him the money trust, but essentially he would invest in these companies, people like Carnegie or Rockefeller or Edison. He's going to actually buy Carnegie Steel later. He held 341 directorships in corporations. So as he bought stock, he would control the company. He valued efficiency. And so he controlled over $22 billion of corporations in the United States, which is a lot of power. So one of the positives of these new innovations and corporations is that people are going to be having a better standard of living. They are going to have cheaper goods. There's going to be more leisure time. We talked before about women and like canned goods, that they could have more leisure time. Department stores are going to pop up in cities, these like skyscrapers, to sell to people. And the other way a lot of people bought these consumer goods was through mail order catalogs, especially in rural areas. So now people have access to all of these consumer goods, but most folks are not going to have a lot of money, so they're going to have increased debt as they are buying these consumer goods. With the rise of mass production comes mass advertising and selling. And so before the Industrial Revolution, most goods were either made at home or purchased locally. But now with advertising, businesses are competing for customers. And what they're really doing is trying to sell this like new idea of life. There is a rising middle class, and people kind of felt like if they had these goods, they would be a member of this new middle class. And they're going to be purchasing these items that was usually only meant for the wealthy. And the standard of living is increasing, during the Gilded Age. Even the poor had things that, wealthy folks could only imagine before. So the problem with, the kind of robber baron aspect of the rise of big business is labor. People were, more and more people are working it for wage labor, meaning they're just getting paid. Before, in 1865, 60% of people were farmers. Now only 40% are. And this working class had harsh conditions. They had low wages, like 20 cents per hour, annual salary of barely $600. 20% of the population was below the poverty line. And as we are talking about this increase in leisure time for some folks, these people who are working in the factory have to work 60 hours a week, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. In the steel mills, it was 12 hours a day for 7 days a week. There's a lack of safety standards. And, in 1913, 25,000 Americans lose their lives on the job. 700,000 are going to suffer from injuries. So much of the working class is working in terrible conditions for long hours for very little wage. While they are working, it is managed under what was called Taylor's scientific management. They would break things up into tasks so that people were just basically cogs in the machine. It's getting rid of skilled labor, and it allowed factories to hire women and children. They're going to pay women and children less than men because of, gender dynamics at the time. And so these are repetitive tasks for low wages. And because the wages are so low, families, women and children had to work in order to kind of make ends meet. Workers are going to start to organize, but the United States idea of this, you can make it if you try, rags to riches work ethic, are kind of they feel like these unions are un-American. There's a lot of harsh reprisals, backlash against these unions. One example the book gives is the Molly Maguires. Miners try to get attention about their, horrible work conditions, and, the corporation is going to hire detectives. They're going to infiltrate the Molly Maguires. They're going to find 24 names of people who are involved. The Molly Maguires did do violent action to try to get attention to their plight, and 10 of them are going to be hanged in 1877. There is also going to be railroad strikes, steel strikes, and what happens in these strikes is that the militia or the police are going to be killed, are going to be brought in to put these things down. There are a few different approaches. The book only really focuses on two. One is the Knights of Labor. This is one big union. It was a vision after the Panic of 1873 that everyone would get together, regardless of gender or immigration status, and work together to reform society as a whole. It welcomed women, African Americans, Native Americans, and all trades and skills. It becomes a popular union, but after the Haymarket Square, a bomb is going to go off and kill police. 7 anarchists are going to be arrested and put to death, and the Knights of Labor are going to be blamed. This is a popular flyer that shows up a lot, but it is a Knights of Labor advertisement to get together for the Haymarket Square. It's in different languages. It's appealing to to everybody, and what they're asking for is the 8-hour week. When the police are killed, when the bomb goes off, the Knights of Labor are going to be blamed, and their popularity is going to go down. The second approach is more targeted. This is going to be the AFL, or craft unions. These are a collection of skilled labor trying to ask for better and specific demands. So it's going to be steel workers asking for a raise. It's going to be, or, better working conditions. This is not a large, union that has everybody in it. It is workers organizing for better conditions for themselves. It is more exclusive. It's going to it's going to be kind of more anti-immigrant. It is not going to include a lot of African Americans, and it is what Samuel Gompers called like bread and butter unionism. So pretty much during this time, you just have reprisals against the union. One example is the Homestead strike. Carnegie Steel is Carnegie goes to Scotland. Frick is the one who's involved in coordinating their response. But essentially, the steel workers are going to go on strike. They're going to try to prevent anyone from getting into the steel factory. Frick is going to call in the Pinkertons, which are these like private detectives. There's going to be a skirmish where some of the Pinkertons and some of the workers are going to be killed. And then the militia is going to be called in to actually bring in the strike breaker workers. The Pullman strike is another example of a strike. Pullman fired 3,000 of his 6,000 employees. He cut worker wages by 25%, but he was charging high rates of rent at the company town where everyone had to live. Eugene Debs is going to be the head of the railway union, and he basically ends up stopping all trains because he said no one should touch a car that had a Pullman car on them. Debs is going to be arrested, and the U.S. troops are going to be called in to protect workers who are going in to break the strike. So what we see again and again during the Gilded Age is that the workers try to organize under unions or they have strikes, but the United States and the states and other people are going to organize against them with militias or police, or the corporations will hire the Pinkertons or private detectives. All right, that's it for today. Thanks.